Let's start with saponins and dive in a little more into details regarding the science here. There are multiple studies done in animal models and in cell culture, which pretty clearly show that saponins, these compounds, remember these are triterpene glycosides, which is just a fancy word for a fancy chemical molecule that occur in things like oats, quinoa, soybeans, etc. These chemicals are very problematic for the gut. These are damaging to the gut. And that's really why they are designed. That's exactly what they're meant to do. Saponins are meant to damage the gut. So the authors of this study looked at 4 saponins, and when the cell culture, which was meant to mimic the human gut, was exposed to these saponins, there were clear increases in transport across the membrane, which is essentially the equivalent of leaky gut, damage to the human gut. And so I think that there are many studies like this showing that saponins are a problem for the gut, for humans especially. Here's another study which is talking about reducing the damage of the quinoa saponins on human gastric mucosa cells by a heating process. Now, unfortunately, if you read the study, they weren't able to completely abrogate or remove the damage to the human gut, the human gastric mucosal cells, by heating them. Saponins are very resistant to degradation by heating. And we know that these quinoa saponins are problematic for the human gut. So I don't understand, even just pausing here, how anyone can really believe that quinoa is benign for humans. I've done previous posts on quinoa and shared my own anecdotes. Quinoa is not very easy to degrade or to digest, which is essentially the point of all these defense chemicals on these grains. And I know this is a podcast about oats, but it overlaps to quinoa. And the idea is that if you eat quinoa, unless you chew the heck out of that, you're going to see that quinoa in your poop, meaning the quinoa has done essentially nothing for you. You've got no nutrients. All of those amino acids you think are beneficial in quinoa are not being absorbed because the point of that quinoa is a seed. That seed wants to live. And the whole point of that quinoa is to move through your gut and go out in your poop in a nice warm pile of fertilizer to grow somewhere else. So yes, you can sprout it. That will decrease some of the problems, but the saponins are not degraded by heat. They're still going to be there even if you sprout the grain. So people will say, what if I sprout the oats? What if I ferment the oats? Well, fermentation of the oats will help with phytic acid somewhat, but it won't help with the saponins. And heating won't help with the saponins from oats or quinoa. So you're just stuck with these defense chemicals. These defense chemicals also occur in things like potatoes. Solanine is a type of saponin. So these are prevalent in the plant kingdom, and understanding that these are damaging for your gut. And I believe that most human illness begins in the gut. There are nutrient deficiencies. There are things like seed oils, which accumulate in our cell membranes. These cause metabolic harm. But I think most of the problems with plant foods and these chemicals that they have, these defense chemicals, are on the human gut. They irritate the human gut. They cause activation of the immune system. They may even bind the TLR4 or TLR5 receptors, toll-like receptors in the gut, leading to inflammation, cascades downstream, increasing things like cortisol, serotonin, or estrogen, which are negative in the human body. But regardless, there's pretty solid evidence that saponins are damaging to the human gut and that cooking doesn't degrade these compounds.
Saponins are another defense chemical plants produce to protect themselves. They are a plant hormone that protects against fungal and bacterial infections. Saponins are abundant in these foods, and many of them are also high in oxalates, lectins, phytates, salicylates, and tannins, giving you even more reason to not want to eat these foods. Saponins are used to make soaps and detergents, as an emulsifier in food and cosmetic products, as an ingredient in vaccines, as a foaming agent in fire extinguishers, used in the synthesis of steroids, and Jesus Christ Almighty, to make birth control pills. In the 1950s, in a Mexico City-based research lab, Luis Ernesto Miramontes synthesized the first ever synthetic birth control pill using saponins from wild yams. This was possible because the chemical structure of certain saponins is very similar to steroid hormones like estrogen, cortisone, and testosterone. There is research suggesting that certain plant saponins, like in herbal supplements, may be used to increase testosterone in men, but it is countered quickly by other studies showing no correlation. In the end, there's no magical food supplement that's going to increase your testosterone, but what will increase your testosterone is eating the way humans evolved to eat.
How do I reduce my environmental footprint but still maintain personal hygiene? Actually, nature already has a solution. plants, and others like these that have been used as soaps for centuries.
There's a compound called saponin that is present in every plant. They are known as phytoprotectants, chemicals that shield plants from microorganisms and pests. This same protective compound is also a gray natural soap with antifungal and antimicrobial properties.
Chlorotins, lanostins, and cucurbitins. Saponins possess detergent properties because the carbohydrate portion of the molecule is water-soluble, whereas the saponin is fat-soluble. The amphiphilic nature of all of the saponins enables them to act as soaps and detergents. However, since the saponins contain erythrocytes, they are highly toxic if they reach mammalian blood, and are sometimes used to incapacitate and catch fish.
Eating saponins is like eating soap. The foam that rises to the top while cooking beans and the bitter taste you get from alcohol and other plant foods is the result of saponins, which are designed to make plants less desirable to be eaten by predators. Maybe we should take the hint. Saponins are very heat resistant, just like oxalates, and cannot be cooked away. If you boil your food though, some of it can leach out into the water, which can then be discarded, which can lower saponin content by a little bit. Studies also show things like sprouting don't actually help much to lower saponin content either. So, saponins too have the ability to damage the gut lining, leading to leaky gut syndrome. Just like oxalates and lectins, they can directly cause damage to the epithelial cells lining our gut, allowing foreign particles into the bloodstream and contributing to many health problems. While destroying the gut, saponins simultaneously also inhibit our digestive enzymes like trypsin, chymotrypsin, and lipase, disrupting our body's abilities to absorb fat and protein, just like some of the other anti-nutrients. But you guessed it, saponins too also act like an anti-nutrient, binding with things like calcium, iron, and zinc. And unlike some of the other anti-nutrients, saponins can actually bind with cholesterol as well, preventing its absorption. This will lead to doctors claiming that it's heart healthy, but we all know the truth, that the higher your cholesterol markers, the longer you live. Saponins can also disrupt the endocrine system, affecting male and female hormones by lowering testosterone and causing feminization in men. And for women, it can cause increased risk of breast cancer, infertility, and higher incidences of birth defects. Saponins have been shown to be able to remove the cell membrane and destroy red blood cells, to damage and dissolve the endothelium of blood vessels, and are considered genotoxic, meaning they can cause DNA damage and interfere with cell replication. Essentially, the evidence shows that saponins are likely to cause problems no matter where they end up in the body. Most of the reported health benefits from saponins involve things like lowering blood glucose, insulin levels, and cholesterol levels. But you don't have to worry about any of these things anyways if you're eating a healthy diet.
To avoid these saponins in your oats, other than placing the oats where they belong, which I believe is in the trash can. You decide. And I love that in this study, the first line they say oats are commonly consumed as whole grains, generally considered as a healthy food. However, the bioactive compounds in oats have not been fully investigated. Yeah, this happens so often that we eat a lot of foods, especially plant foods, as humans that we're told are health foods, but many of the bioactive compounds in there have not been fully examined and are probably quite problematic for humans, which is essentially what I believe and what many people believe to be the genesis, the beginnings of autoimmunity in humans. So, in summary, saponins, soapy molecules on oats, on quinoa, on soybeans, on many grains in general, on legumes, inhibiting digestive enzymes, causing inflammation in the gut, causing leaky gut, inhibiting lactase, inhibiting fat metabolism, and even the digestion of proteins, and being a very negative force, things that cannot be washed off very easily, things that cannot be degraded with heating or cooking.